All right. So
Oh,
this
that
workshop today, thank you. This workshop today is developing an at-home yoga practice, and that's a fun little picture I took just the other day on a hike. That's one of my favorite ways to spend time, and that's sort of what we'll talk about today: the difference between yoga as an exercise class and yoga as sort of just an integrative lifestyle philosophy. So most of my exercise looks like hiking, walking through the neighborhood, yard work. And I use yoga as sort of a way to connect with my breath and to explore an inherent expansiveness that exists in my body and in my spirit and in my mind. So, fun little picture here. This is just the hills up next to where I live. So, cool. The agenda today, we're going to be first talking about who I am, what it is I do, and who this workshop is intended for. We'll be talking about what I consider to be home practice essentials. So these are my absolute requisites for all home yoga practitioners. And I will give you a spoiler alert now. That list is incredibly short, and you already have those things. So rest assured on that. Next, we'll be talking about props as support in our practice. So helpful optional tools to use to increase our sense of stability and support expansiveness in our practice. So this is a fresh opportunity for us to, from this day forward, look at yoga as a way to expand, a way to increase ease, a way to increase mobility, and from there bring that into our lives. We'll also be talking sort of about props that you need versus props that might be purely accessory. And I don't have anything against any type of prop. So I'm excited to talk to you about that and maybe some things that might be new to you. And lastly, we'll be applying what we've just learned through a short movement and breath awareness training. This will be just a light movement we can do either seated or standing. We'll determine that at the end of this workshop today. Moving on, got a couple more pictures here. So who I am. So talking about some identities that I carry and sort of my background as a yoga teacher. So more pictures of me doing some yoga up on some rocks and a selfie of me in my all knitted outfit down by a creek nearby. So who I am, identities that I carry. My name is Elizabeth. My pronouns are she and they. And I've been teaching yoga for about 10 years now. It'll be 10 years this summer since I graduated from my first 200-hour training. I am biracial, Black, femme, presenting person. And all of these things really matter in how I teach yoga and what I bring to the classroom. So it's very important to me to emphasize degendered language in our teaching. The body, the mind, these things are universal and don't require it to be gendered. So that's something that I bring into my teaching that's very important. What I do is functional movement and guided breath training. So by that, I mean maybe a little bit different than what your typical yoga class you've been familiar with. So less of the traditional asanas or postures of yoga and more integrative movement that we can bring into our life. So things that echo back to ways that we get groceries out of the car and ways that we even get up out of bed. So things that we can do to just make our lives safer. And with the breath guided element, always, this is something we do breathing passively. When we can bring some awareness to the quality of the breath and use this as a tool to expand against constriction, expand against anxiety, expand against physical tension in the body. It's really a wonderful tool that we all benefit from taking advantage of. So that's part of what is so important to me and what I'm excited to share today. Who this workshop is for, you. So you being any single person that will come across this, whether you are very beginner, you've heard of yoga, you don't know where to start, or you are advanced practitioner, you've got, maybe you've got trapeze folks at your house. I don't know. But this is valid and perfectly good for you to take a moment just to pause, take a step back and reconnect to the foundations of maybe why you first got into this practice, which often for many of us is to feel better. So how do we do that? It's easier. It's easier than it seems, but easier said than done. So moving on. So what I consider to be your home yoga practice essentials. So I imagine this kind of like a food pyramid. So the first most important tool that you need to start a yoga practice at home is a baseline of safety. So establishing a baseline of safety. And by that, I mean taking a moment to bring awareness to the quality of safety you feel in the environment you spend your time in and in the environment you plan to practice yoga in. So that seems a little vague or maybe a little confusing. Let's bring that home. What I mean is you can't practice yoga in a house that's on fire. You can't practice yoga in the middle of a busy intersection because those are inherently unsafe places for us to let go of control, take a moment and a breath. So we want to get to a place where we feel just an immediate sense of safety. And from there, we're working on expanding the capacity for comfort, the capacity for stability. So next in sort of my pyramid of important tools is a desire to practice. And I think we can spend a lot of time about talking about what that looks like, but foundational to our practice and to developing what I would consider a consistent home yoga practice or something that you come to daily, be it 30 seconds or 30 minutes a day. What grounds us in that is a desire to practice that we really contemplate. Why do you want to cultivate a practice? And again, like I said, for most of us, it's to feel better. And this is something that can be done incrementally. And that first seed is just the desire to feel better in our bodies, feel better in our minds, feel better in the world around us, feel better in our relationships, feel better in our with our coworkers. So this is the seed of a yogic lifestyle that extends beyond what we do on the mat. And then sort of what I think also to just be foundational, so very, very important, is realistic expectations. So that's why I've shared over here sort of this little sprout, and we see, maybe what we see above the surface is tiny little leaves, and it's easy just to overlook that. But when you look beneath the surface and you see the roots of just how much time, how many nutrients and sunlight and the correct soil even for this to exist. And so I think it's important that we have realistic expectations of where we're starting with a home yoga practice and realistic expectations of where we'd like to go with that practice. So realistic expectations of where we're starting looks like goals grounded in a familiarity with our existing comfort zone. So I'm not going to necessarily look at people in a yoga magazine doing handstands on the edge of a cliff and say, that's my aspiration. I know that's not a realistic expectation, but I can look at my neighbors, I can look at my friends in class, my colleagues, and I can say, here's someone who makes time for themselves. Or, I notice this person always stays hydrated. And we can have realistic expectations, realistic aspirations that are incremental progressions towards a regular home yoga practice that is ultimately enriching and nutritive to our lifestyle. So moving on, we're going to be talking about props as support for your home yoga practice. So I think it's important to consider a yoga mat as a yoga prop. So I think that's something that really hangs us up for a long time. Whether we feel like we're doing yoga right is whether we have an official yoga mat. And I think there's even a hierarchy within that of brands and quality. And there's a lot of weight put onto that. And so I think that it's important for us to know that a yoga mat is a prop. It's perfectly fine to do yoga and by yoga, I mean physical yoga, asana postures, as long as we feel safe and supported in our feet and starting in our base, and we'll talk more about that later, but as long as we're coming from that foundation, well-fitting tennis shoes on, a tennis court is a perfectly acceptable way to get started. Barefoot in your living room on the carpet is perfectly acceptable. So yoga mats, a rug, blankets, these things can sort of offer us a comfortable foundation for very simple movements that are really, really nutritive to the body. Let the yoga mat be something that comes secondary and Something I will say about yoga mats is when you are in the position to be shopping for one, there's something really grounding about having one place, it's your yoga place that you return to for your practice. So there's something to be said about that, which is something we can, explore at another time. But moving on from there, things around the house that can make yoga more accessible to you and provide support. Towels, cushions, blankets from around the house. I have a picture here. This is just a stock image of some blankets and pillows. Really often, my practice for the day simply looks like waking up thinking, oh, I have an allergy headache immediately, or thinking, oh, my shoulder and my neck from yesterday. And so my practice has been simply take that blanket, get down on the floor, and take just a moment to do some gentle twists. Maybe fold that blanket up, do some supported child's pose. And so I can show you some examples of how we would utilize those to be supportive in your practice. But again, there's no need to buy commercial yoga props if you're not in that place yet, or if it's just not financially available or for any reason. So moving on from there, sort of getting into what I do find really fascinating and really helpful is some of the commercial props that are available. So blocks, straps, and yoga bolsters, and commercially manufactured meditation cushions. So this can be sort of a controversial topic because, it's a value of yoga that we want to sort of be mindful of our consumerism and the amount of products that we are taking in, and our attachment to these products as parts of our practice or essential to our practice. And with that being said, I also find them really valuable for creating space and creating comfort in the body. So blocks are one that you find at most yoga studios, and it's one of the first props that I think people move on from yoga mats. One of the first props that you might invest in. And there's lots of options: big blocks, small blocks, cork blocks, foam blocks, travel blocks. The thing is, they are relatively expensive, I think, for most people's budget. So if you're in the market for blocks, I would say stick to one or two until you maybe have found ways to incorporate them, and then see about investing in a few more. But I think they're truly invaluable. I use them constantly in my practice. And part of that is just getting past this Western approach that using blocks somehow means we're not doing enough, or we're not doing it correctly or fully. And I just really invite you to cast that aside and to invite anything. So we'll start with blocks and let it be elsewhere in our lives, anything that increases our capacity for comfort and support, because those things are good things. So another thing I really love is yoga straps. And yoga straps, this is a 8-foot long one from Manduka, but these are very easy to replace with just a long sock, a towel, a blanket off the bed, pillowcase, a belt, anything that you can sort of hold and get some length. And just an example here. So this is sort of my favorite application for a yoga strap, or again, a belt, a sock, is just to bring that hand up. And I think most people are familiar with this shoulder stretch, but reaching back behind the back, I can actually clasp it here in a way that would not be possible to me with my shoulder mobility, which is limited here. And it allows me to sort of have a little bit of support, then pressing my hands into my upper back. And it allows me to get that sensation of connection, that energetic connection between both arms without any strain here. So remembering the function of that stretch is to create expansiveness in our shoulder. The strap allows me to do that without compromising anything. Yoga bolsters are another thing that I think has become really popular lately. Let me move this up. They've become really popular lately, and you see many on the market. Yoga bolsters are very easy to replace with blankets and pillows. So I would say they're not a primary prop that you need. But that being said, this rectangular yoga bolster is one of my favorite props that I have in my house for so many reasons, simply just to provide me support when I'm sitting in a meditative posture on the floor. I can just sort of elevate my seat and then get my pelvis in a better alignment. One of my very favorite, and again, I'm going to move this down here, one of my very favorite uses of a yoga bolster, and again, this could be this could be replicated with blankets, but one of my very favorite uses is just this gentle heart opener, also called supported fish pose. So simply starting in a comfortable seat, bringing that bolster all the way to the sacrum, gently lowering myself down and relaxing. So this is one of the most supportive postures I turn to in my own practice. It's accessible and it's actually a very generous expansion in the chest, and it supports this optimal diaphragmatic breathing, which helps down regulate the nervous system. So it takes us out of that fight or flight response and into our rest and digest. And you can stay here for 5 to 10 minutes. And again, so the reason why I like yoga bolsters for this is I know at the end of the day, simplicity really keeps me coming back to my practice. And this bolster takes no time to assemble, whereas something as simple as folding a couple blankets might deter me from getting down and doing it. So little things like that can sometimes make practicing regularly more accessible. So from there, I also really advocate for some non-traditional props in my practice. From this concept of functional movement that we can integrate into our lives, excuse me, there are some things that I think are often overlooked. So let me grab one here and take a drink of my water. So very favorite, and I think some industries will be more familiar with this than others. Definitely any of the pregnancy, prenatal, postnatal group are familiar with this, sometimes called a birth ball, also called a Pilates ball or yoga ball. Give me 1 second here, clear my throat. Wonderful, thank you. So I think, part of the problem with that association, while these are wonderful for pregnancy and birth, supporting the pelvis, supporting sort of a gentle opening in the hips, I think that connotation sometimes keeps people from using them that aren't pregnant. So this is one of my favorite things. There was a while where this was the only yoga I did in a day, was to come to this ball, and I just needed it to be fun, and I needed it to not feel like any type of pressure. So just taking a comfortable seat here with the knees bent, the feet rooted just under my knees, my thighs being parallel with the floor, and taking a moment to engage from the tailbone all the way to the top of my head, shoulders relaxed away from my ears. This is yoga asana. This is a posture. This is an intentional placement of the body, and this absolutely counts. And when I want to do more than the minimum, just bouncing. And so again, when we talk about functional mobility and breath awareness training, breathing through the nose as I bounce, being mindful on the exhales of the relaxation of my shoulders down the backside, and coming to stillness, then observing how has my breath changed in just 30 seconds of movement. And there's so many things we can do with a ball like this. But again, I just think it's really profound. Advanced practitioners, when you can get your body into a new place to experience a different type of sensation, I think we can come back and we can unlock some things by returning to those foundations. Another one is tennis balls. We're often familiar with tennis balls for rubbing out the feet. So that's a good one. I won't spend too much time talking about that, but that one really gets the fascia of the arches of the feet. And you can even use a tennis ball. I just did this last night. I had a big knot on my shoulder from carrying my backpack hiking, and you can place it against the wall and sort of lean against it. And like a bear scratching your back, you can kind of roll up and down on it, and that feels really lovely. So a little bit spent on yoga prop trends. I think there's a lot of branding going on and a lot of commercial products being pushed at us for wellness. And what's hard about that is in that there are some really wonderful things, and it's difficult to navigate when there's a lot of noise going on and you don't necessarily know what is worth spending money on. So just briefly touching on a couple of those things. I know yoga wheels are really popular right now. Um, I've gone back and forth actually for years on whether or not I recommended the yoga wheels. By a yoga wheel, I mean something like this. And so it's got sort of like a flip flop foam texture, and this one's plastic. I've also seen wood and bamboo and a few other things. I first got it, and I'll be honest, I got it because I saw it online and I thought that looks cool for pictures. And I think that's what a lot of people buy it for, and then it ends up just sitting unused. And that's really unfortunate. I think the other thing I see online is people who are going for sort of an aspirational um, image that they're hoping to finish with to take a picture. And so what I see is a lot of deep back bends without any sort of support, which is just very, very dangerous. So that makes me hesitant to recommend them to people. That being said, if you are someone who's able to have things in your home and use them safely, and you don't feel tempted to be risky with them, a yoga wheel can be really wonderful for a gentle expansion in the spine. So similar to what we were doing with the bolster, the yoga wheel, this is going to be slightly deeper. And again, this is even a great place to bring a block into it. So we can see I have a lot of tools at my disposal. That's because this is what I do for a living, and this is what I do as my main self-care modality. So I invest in that, and I've found that to be beneficial. But putting a block allows me to make a stop, a hard stop for the wheel, so it's not going to roll anywhere. That makes sure that I'm safe and I'm less likely to tip into a dangerous position. And from here, just like I did with the bolster, I can sit and scoot my seat back so that my sacrum is in contact, and I can put my thumbs on either side of the wheel until my spine is directly centered. And from here, this is where I depart from what a lot of what I see online, which is these big, grand back bends over it. I just invite you to pause and question if that's going to help you create comfort, support, and expansion in your body. Well, if that's potentially a way to be injured. So in the spirit of comfort and expansion, I bring my thumb to the wheel just where my sacrum would be, or sort of the dimples of the low back. And then keeping support there, I very carefully, while pressing the soles of the feet into the floor, allow the spine to lean back to meet the wheel, keeping the chin tucked towards the sternum. So I'm protecting the back of the neck, the cervical spine, and breathing through the nose into the belly. And if this feels supportive, I can even interlace the fingers and bring them just behind the head for support. And if this feels good, very carefully gazing towards the ceiling. So as we see here, there's no need for any big, full, fanciful, magazine cover. I'm getting expansion through the rib cage, through the individual intercostal muscles between my ribs. This allows me to, not just today, take a full breath, but later in my day, tomorrow, and cumulatively expands my capacity to take a big, full breath the more I do it. Exhaling to come out, and equally important, taking the spine forward to round onto my legs and pause. Notice how this changes the breath. Inhaling to lift. And again, so that's just a demonstration of a yoga wheel used in a way that I think is really helpful and supportive. And I think that's one of the only things that it's very, very good for. And so for that, I wouldn't spend however much they cost if that's the only thing you're going to use it for. Because as we said, with the bolster, blankets, we have so many other ways to achieve that similar sort of sensation. Moving on from there, another one, just briefly, acupressure mats. I see this is really popular online. I see them touted for all sorts of different benefits. It'll cure your carrots in the garden being eaten by mice, it's like, it'll do everything for you. Said, I have one, again, just like with the yoga wheel, I have one because I like to invest in these types of things. If there's a chance that it'll be helpful for me, I trust my discernment. I trust my ability to do research, and I trust my ability to say this doesn't work for me, and to move on. So that being said, I really have actually come to like this acupressure mat. It's a whole nother topic. It's not really anything to do with practicing yoga, but if you are an advanced practitioner or you're someone who likes to try wellness things, I would say I've personally found it helpful for some tension headaches I get from neck pain that then go on to be um, sort of the beginnings of a migraine, and I can feel this transition happening, and I found interrupting it with 10 minutes on the acupressure mat actually helps, which shocks me. So, so I thought I would share that as well. Another thing, sound bowls, sound bath, sound meditation, all of this stuff. I have one, so I'm not being derogatory about those things. I would say always with all of these, when we start to feel like having these things is the key to our practice and that's what's going to unlock some transformative experience, or when we start to feel like not having them is what's preventing us from unlocking some transformative experience, that's when they become harmful to us and no longer helpful. So I love my Himalayan singing bowls. I love feeling connected to sort of the chain of custody when you get a reputable quality singing bowl. I just like knowing I'm participating in that legacy. And it's beautiful. And I think sound therapy is a beautiful addition. Necessary for yoga asana practice? No way. Wonderful addition to your life. If you like noise, if you like sound, if you like music, worth exploring. Moving on from there, let's put it into practice a little bit. So apply what we've just learned into a little bit of short movement. So allow you to unmute if you'd like, and just let me know about the area that you're if you're seated or if you're to sit on my bolster on my mat as well. Now we can just take a moment. So you've already been sitting here for a moment. If your legs are comfortable as they are, then keep them there. If you know in your practice you like to switch your legs at some point, feel free to do that. My knees and hips feel pretty good here like this today. A few things we can check in with. So using a bolster, always making sure that we're sitting more towards the front of the bolster so that we're using it to its best advantage for us to lengthen the spine from the base of the pelvis all the way up through the crown of the head. And this is just to prevent sort of that curling of the spine that happens when we sit too far to the back and we start to sort of lose our stability there. So finding our base through the pelvis, finding a place where the legs relax into the support of the floor. The hands might be rested on the knees. They might be anywhere that's comfortable here. And once you've found your stable start, you can allow the eyes to close if that's comfortable for you today, or you can just allow them to soften, bringing the gaze in towards the body. With that, bringing our awareness to the breath. So by bringing awareness to the breath, I mean there's no effort in this moment to change it or lengthen it or augment it in any way. We're simply observing in this moment qualities. Does the breath want to move through the nose? Is that difficult? Does the breath want to move through the mouth? Is it quick? Is it rested? If it feels good, you can bring one hand to the chest just over the heart, one hand to the belly just over the navel. And we can observe the breath here in these spaces. So again, no need to change the breath. Simply notice here On the inhale, do I feel the breath expanding into the belly, or do I feel the breath expanding into the chest? And either's fine. We're just developing our ability to notice. Kind of breathing through the nose feels good. See if we can continue to breathe through the nose. On the inhale, feel the navel move away from the spine towards the hand on the belly. Exhaling, feel it naturally draw towards the center. And explore this relationship of the navel and the spine with your own breath. Inhaling, we could sit up taller. Exhaling, we could relax the shoulders down the back side of the body, sit up through the spine, sit up through the crown. Continuing with the breath, continuing with the noticing. If the breath feels like it's creeping up into the chest, notice your ability to, just by drawing awareness to the navel, your ability to send the breath there. On the next inhale, we can reach our arms up towards the ceiling, reach the fingertips up towards the ceiling. And nothing strenuous here. Just take a moment to wiggle the fingertips towards the sky. You can do some gentle circles with the wrist. The benefit of this just being bringing that blood back down from the hands, from the extremities towards the heart to be clean. Continuing with our breath, continuing with the awareness, the sensation of air in the nostrils, the sensation of settling, of gravity pulling the pelvis. And slowly releasing the arms, releasing the hands to the knees. Once again, eyes open or closed, just notice. Notice the breath in this state. It's a tiny bit of movement. We're going to take some very gentle cat-cow tilts. So instead of thinking of this as a mid-spine or a lower back action, we're thinking of this as sort of our relationship with our collarbones in space. So a very, very subtle movement. As we inhale, you might even gaze towards the eyebrows slightly, drawing the sternum forward. Feel the weight rooted still in the pelvis. Exhaling to round slightly. Belly button towards the spine, chin towards the sternum. Continuing with your own breath. This is very minimal cat-cow. So it's as if we want to see just how small we can make this cat-cow breath and how intentionally we can focus on the breath being the driving force for this movement. So the arch of the back lasts only as long as the inhale is natural, and immediately as you run out of inhale, exhaling, you round. So the breath guides the movement, not the other way. And as it feels good, inhale, you might make this slightly bigger. The belly might come forward just the tiniest, most not recognizable amount energetically. And as we round, exhaling, turning inward. Just a couple more breaths here, sensing and just noticing. Exhaling to come back to center. And once again, notice. Next, inhale, we're going to reach up through the arms. One more time. We're going to prepare for a twist. But this time, instead of thinking of like a deep twist that we normally do here, we're going to bring the arms out bent 90 degrees. So they're sort of cactus arms. And this twist is going to come from the side abdominals, the obliques. And we're going to do this by lengthening, feeling gravity draw the pelvis down into the bolster and the spine drawn long through the top of the head. Inhaling here. As we exhale, we're going to twist one direction towards one side only as far as we can do this using the abdominals. So notice this is just a tiny, tiny movement and just a gentle ringing. So inhaling back to center. Exhaling the other side. Drawing navel in, inhale to center. And these are movements that are guided purely by the length of the breath. And if you notice the shoulders are getting tired at all, just bring the fingertips to the shoulders. And you can just have the elbows sticking out. And this keeps the spine long. Just a couple more breaths here. Bringing your attention to the sensation within the belly, the internal belly. Next inhale to come back to center, release the hands. Just going to finish today with a few moments of just meditative breath, basic breath awareness training, allowing the eyes to close in our comfortable seat or just fall to a soft gaze. We're going to, on the inhale, notice the sensation of the breath, the physical sensation of the air as it passes through the nostrils. As we exhale, notice the sensation of the air on the upper lip. Inhale and exhale. With every inhale, drawing long through the spine. With every exhale, deepening our ease. Following that breath in through the nostrils and out. And just noticing any sensations or any thoughts, any feelings. With the inhale, we notice. And with the exhale, release them. Inhaling to notice. And exhaling to ground. Inhaling to open. And exhaling to come to center. You can bring the hands together at heart center if that feels right. Press the palms together, press the fingertips together. Just gently. If this feels like this takes work in your hands and shoulders to press the palms together, back that out. And just enough pressure to make connection here. I invite you one more time just to connect with this quality of noticing the breath, with the intention and awareness that as we practice this, we strengthen it. And as we practice this, we develop our capacity to notice. And simply by noticing, we affect change. Thank you so much for sharing this with me today. This has just been wonderful. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you so much.